And welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. So, every week becomes a strange week. So, on the one hand, suicide, kind of a subject. And on the other side, I spoke to Danny Shine, and he's trying to finish a life he's not done with yet. And he's trying to cling on to it, and doing it in an interesting and dignified way, in my opinion. And it's just a very real part of life, is having to at least pretend to let go. And how do you even, how do you tie up all the loose ends and all of that crap? It's and most of the time it just all falls into chaos, and there's just little pieces of a person left behind. And I have my grandmother's sewing machine, just that's it. Little marker somewhere. But anyway, so just very strange contrast. But it's a real part of living, is living with this, sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't, in the sense that you're, sometimes you are a pepper and then sometimes you go back to being Coke. So I could argue that, most of my life I've been pretty suicidal. I have to say, I can't really imagine that there was some day that I would have rejected the offer of, the graceful exit, because and then the only thing that changes about now is that, I would just try to hang on, just because I do see some purpose in making videos, but it is a marginal purpose, a marginal necessity, you could argue, or it could be argued, okay, that it's really not going to matter. But you could argue the other way, that I need to hang around because I'm really going to do something important, eventually, maybe, possibly. So it's just, but anyway, so I thought I would mess with that subject, and the subject of when a person can impose, so I'm sort of arguing that, I'm against this whole imposition thing, people telling me I have to believe in their optimism, and I have to invest in it, and I have to live in it, and I have to keep living in it, in the sense that they keep creating human beings, and human beings that will discover a truth different than the procreators imagine, and will find life, won't be able to chew on it and say this is food, and they'll just sense its gristle, and it's it's not going to go anywhere. Nothing good's going to happen. And so so the argument is against people imposing. The word itself is bad, kind of a thing, and you're just saying, when is it appropriate? Because they're arguing it's appropriate for them to be pro-life and impose life. In some sense, you could argue that other people are arguing that they have the right to defend the negative territory, the defensive territory, and say you don't have a right to do that and I can stop you. And I don't really want a place in any of that kind of argument. I mean, I just make arguments, and I just want to have the debate, and I want to convince people. And I don't want to have a civil war, and I'm not interested in strategies and all of that crap of how to extort or twist or bend the system in some way to force it to pay attention. Not interested. Never really was. Not a big fan of protesting, not a big fan of any impositions, except when absolutely necessary, kind of a thing. And so you could argue that every single civil war, revolutionary war, that all of them were miscalculations, and they were probably much worse than what the people participating anticipated. And it's if they could do it over again, they'd try to find a better solution and all that kind of crap. And it's just always messy. And so that sort of is illustrated by the trolley problem, thought experiment, philosophical tool, where you have a fat guy on a bridge, and the problem is that you can save 5 people by pushing the one person onto the tracks and stopping the train or the trolley. And clearly you can just keep modifying the scenario and put 500 people on the track or 5 million people on the track, or you can just make the fat guy that's going to stop the trolley into a child molester or some other thing. And you could make it clearer and clearer what the right thing to do is, and that it really will matter. The outcome will be substantially different if you act or you don't act. And it's a real dilemma, frankly. I don't think there is any right answer, except when you start making it very extreme. So if I make it an extreme circumstance where you're talking about 1 million people tortured versus 1 person inconvenienced, like he's already suicidal and he has cancer, and he's perfectly willing to jump, except he doesn't know there's this circumstance that he can save 1 million people, and so he's ignorant of it. But there's every indication that he would be perfectly willing to jump if he knew he was supposed to. So you can change it to make it so obvious that, well, not acting would be retarded. If your action was just to inform him, okay, you'd clearly say, okay, yes, interfering is appropriate. I'm going to violate the prime directive and I'm going to interfere, that kind of thing. So, so I think it's all interesting subject matter, and it's related but distantly related to current events. Distant enough where it should not be troublesome. Alright, so let me just play some of the video. You molest kids. There, I was talking about it again right there. So yeah, you just change the scenario a little bit. It becomes easier and easier to accept the violation of imposition, the violation of the social contract, the violation of the principle, because the absolute fact is the output is too important to. You can't miss the opportunity. Not acting is just too stupid. There's a point where that's just the truth. Dies or something. Yes. Okay, let's move ahead a little bit. Let's understand just a huge giant coincidence. So the fact that last week I was talking about that movie, they shoot horses, don't they? And again, I didn't even pick the movie. The movie just happened to be arbitrarily chosen, and it just happens that it's directly parallels a circumstance, and it's kind of a bizarre circumstance having a girl convince somebody to shoot her, okay, because she can't kill herself, so she needs somebody else to do it for her. And that's pretty weird. So yeah, coincidences are fucked up. Encourage people to live a life, to live other people's values, their assumption that it's worth it, their claim that it is, their assertion. I mean, it's an aggressive assertion people are making. So I was talking about the fact that, you know, if they allowed for a reasonable, graceful exit, that is, they allowed people to choose just to say, I've had enough, I want out, a lot of this would be avoided. A lot of these act-up kind of events wouldn't happen, because these events only happen because they're triggered by, you know, all kinds of little pressures, all kinds of stuff that builds up. And so they're first, you know, first they're a person that's not happy, and then they're a person who knows, well, I gotta get out of here, and then they end up being a person who's going to get out of here by shooting the family first or something, or doing something ridiculously stupid because they're angry and emotional. And the fact is if you gave them the right to die 10 years ago, they wouldn't be in that worse state, even more, you know, angry and hostile, and they wouldn't be a threat. And so in an ironic way, the pro-lifers are responsible. Like 7 years old, at least I had known what the concept was, the word, and the basic concept, and I automatically saw brilliance in that observation. Okay, so evolution. You know, so, you know, as opposed to these silly religious explanations. So around that age or whatever, I was able to find an answer that wasn't silly and that made rational sense. The downside was, what comes with that is, the more you learn how it's just an insidious experiment, you know, where you make a whole bunch of these demonstration models and then force them to beat the shit out of each other, you know, to just have a couple of scarred survivors in the end. Too stupid. And, you know, zillions and zillions of them. And, you know, and the idea is that their rotten corpses will be washed up. So I was talking about Jacques Cousteau and little things that gave you this, you know, this understanding that, wow, nature sucks. And so the story of the salmon and the, you know, there's lots of fish stories. And the fact is, we're still, you know, we're just fish out of water. I mean, it's all fish on the inside. It's all fishy, you know, but whatever. Moving on. Decided 100 million years ago and a billion years ago, you know. It was decided pretty far back. All right, so just talking about the idea that the universe is deterministic, and anything that can happen. So that was one of my first statements of reasoning, where I just got the idea that, yeah, it's just, it could be any kind of Frankenstein monster. I mean, you could just imagine any form, and it's not likely it's going to be a beautiful construction. It's more likely it will be a hideous one, because there is no intelligent design. There's no overseer to make sure it's not an ugly painting. It's just more likely that the random finger painting is going to be ugly than beautiful. Because this system is doesn't have any proofing in it. There's nothing changed. Yeah, so that's just the determinism argument. There's nothing to screw up the cycle of the thermodynamics, and you're just stuck with this. You know, everything's on a course, and it's just going to play out, and we're just the mechanism through which it plays out. We're just, you know, frankly, reading the script. And in the script can be a place where you say, let's change the script. And so you change the script, but that's part of the script, you know. So it really is, there's just no room for fudgy talk about where the universe is going being directed in any way. because the little bits that started it don't have any capacity to see a better path. Yeah, I can do this for a while. It's just the fact of having it. I was just talking about having the right to die would be such a relief to so many people that it would take all this pressure off, and they're going to be less angsty and less concerned, and they're not going to get involved in all kinds of things because they don't feel this pressure to find a solution, because they have a nice clear path to the exit door and they can get out. They can escape their panic. And it just sucks, absolutely sucks, that the nasty, evil pro-lifers, just in reverence to their silly God, they will sacrifice all of that human suffering on the altar of their silly fable. And that's all they're doing. They're just making a bunch of people unnecessarily miserable, so they can say, I fought for God. No, you were an idiot and an asshole, and you did nothing good. You just wasted suffering. And it wasn't yours, so you felt perfectly fine because it wasn't your suffering you wasted. It's somebody else's. So you're so scummy. Didn't have a right to die, and I would contemplate driving my car into a church or something. Yes, so that's the catch of it, is that, without that right, you start getting angry and all this other crap. So when I was, in my early 20s and very uncomfortable and very panicked, I would imagine such things. Never even close to actually doing anything, but I just mean, I did think about, well, if I'm going to die anyway, I'm going to, take them with me sort of attitude. And I know I wouldn't have done that. I mean, I know I wouldn't have killed anybody, but I just mean it did run through the head that you want to do something, to fight back. And so all these people, like the Unabomber probably would have committed suicide if he had the right to die. All these people would have been negated as a problem if they had the right to just get the hell out at the first notion that life is insufferably stupid, instead of them being tormented for a decade and turned into a psychotic. Scary. Were people who had contemplated suicide, if not attempted suicide. So the argument is that probably Son of Sam, all these people with all these issues, they all probably would have gracefully exited if you gave them the opportunity. And a lot of unnecessary grief would have been avoided. But no, the silly religious bastards, must force all of this unnecessary wasted suffering. Ugh. Speech. But as a defense against the idea. Okay, so I was talking about free speech, and the fact is that's another point here, is that, you got to have fair speech too. You got to have some mechanism where people can do their spouting and feel that they're getting fairly fair exposure. And obviously these extremists who do these extreme things, they're getting unfair. So they're saying, pay attention to me, read my manifesto, blah, 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 but they're cheating, okay, to get on the front page. And so, it works. So they're wrong, but the system that creates the problem is wrong. So the system that, like, for example, Google controlling who's popular and who's not popular and who they're going to suppress and all of that shouldn't be part of the function of the culture. It shouldn't be a popularity engine. It should try its best to be fairly represent what does exist and give it some sort of proportional representation, you could even argue. Certainly make them more popular, more exposed, but not exclusively exposed kind of thing. So all of those things do matter. I mean, they're all part of the mixture here. Plan, for extorting attention from the world, and boy, that really worked well. So I was talking about Hamas, I think, it's just a really dumb plans they've had. And so I don't know, you say, what's their big victory? I mean, yes, Israel looks like a bunch of petty thugs, but Hamas is all dead. So I don't think it's a winning strategy being an asshole. And that's all it comes down to is, this forcing and extorting and all that's really not what the game should be. The game should be is you just want your fair chance to make your argument and defend your position. And you shouldn't really expect or demand more than that. A fair chance. It's a horrible tragedy that has to be considered, and all of that other crap. Now, in this subject of making arguments on the internet, obviously I've argued. No, you just make arguments on the internet. There's no other, Right, and I brought up the example of slavery and how, obviously it took the Civil War to really fix it, but there was a lot of people making trouble. The Underground Railroad, the whole thing, a lot of people terrorizing, in some sense, the slave industry, and certainly breaking the social contract in facilitating the escape of slaves. It's hard to argue that those people were wrong to violate their social laws to create a benefit. Where do you draw this line of when somebody has a right to act up? My argument is that, you can't. You don't do the cause any good if you start your civil war too soon, and the rest of it is just an argument about. It's really tough. It's hard to sit there and draw some line and say, yes, the people who tried to free the slaves in the South were law-breaking terrorists. That wouldn't be a fair description. If the right-to-lifers could undo history, okay, and I would have killed myself at 10, I'm arguing they would probably be going to be better off. Right, so you could argue that the entire pessimistic anti-life culture would likely gracefully exit if they gave it the chance, and then they wouldn't even have to have these arguments because there'd be so few people they'd have to argue with, because all the dissenters would basically just say, okay, yeah, I'll just get the hell out of here. Go ahead, you all crazy fucks, go fuck yourselves. And, I'm going home, Give them more, more of those little jabs. So still just talking about the fact that still, there's just those, it all adds up, and there's some point that the trigger is pulled, but there's a whole bunch of pressure that builds up to these bad events, and it seems there's no system and there's no mechanism that's doing anything to depressurize. A right to die. a rational recognition that you don't have a right to tell somebody what their life means. They have a right to define that. Yeah. So, it's just a basic idea that how can somebody arrogantly argue that they know what another person's existence means and is, and they're going to tell them that they must believe what they believe? I mean, it's just so obnoxious that they have to invest so that something as useful as medical technology can't be used by the individual to their best purpose. No, it can only be used for their purpose. It can't be a graceful death mechanism. It can only be a prolonged life mechanism. It's obnoxious. Yeah, back. Just very uncomfortable tonight. Anyway, okay, continuing. My life is mine to have to endure. Yes. My pain is my pain. It's not your pain. You don't have a right to tell me what my pain's worth. You don't have a right to do any of that kind of crap. And really, so the first imposition is the creator, and obligating the thing created to figure out what to do with the fact that it exists. And again, the simple truth is that as easy as they injected you into the world, you should be able to exit the world. It's only fair, frankly. All that kind of crap, it's in my best interest to, when it's time, to die gracefully. I mean, it's just such an obvious fact. It's one of the most important events in your life is going to be dying. And you should do it as well as possible, and as comfortably as possible, without any, just imagine, without any fear of, what if this happens? What if it gets worse? What if, all that is taken away, and you can, do your transition free of fear and anxiety and worry and being terrorized by death. And that's, by dying, not death, dying. And no, they want to make death a terrorist. They're the ones, the pro-lifers are the ones trying to terrorize us, with their, you're going to hell, bullshit. The hell is the world they've created. Fetuses being aborted wouldn't mean anything. So I was just talking about it to a God who has all this power and all this whatever control. Obviously, he's not concerned. He can save the fetuses' souls before they go through the process. He could extract them at any moment. He could raise them from the circumstance. So obviously, it's not an issue. It's, for a God. So it's just a little bit silly to say that there's some threat that the poor fetuses will go to hell. Bullshit. It's just, it's so bad. Just so bad. I mean, if you look at fetuses, right, you can see, I saw the thing, like a whale and a human. And, you almost can't tell the difference between the two, 5 months into the process. It's just, well, whatever. It's just so obvious people have a completely perverse notion of reality. Kind of crap. That's why you make videos and you have arguments. Is to try to minimize the cavern of difference in that understanding and find some compromise, some way to fairly resolve and to end up with something other than a civil war. Yeah. And so I do make a point in this video to sort of point out that, I'm not interested in any war against any ideology. And the only point where something has to be done, where you have to do this imposing thing, is in the end game for the biological system. You can't fix the biological system. You can't have an argument with it. You can't democratically vote. You can't do anything to fix that. Realistically, I just say as a pragmatic solution is you got to cull it. You've got to, bite the negative short-term bullet for the long-term interest, and that's the responsible thing to do before you become a. We have to, we have to violate civilization. To rebuild civilization or something like that. So, I mean, every revolutionary or freedom fighter is basically making that argument. I'm going to break the social contract so I can write a new one. And not much you can do. I mean, there's no resolution to this problem of conflict. And again, I'm advocating that the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 10th resort should be argue it first. Argue it. And then actually win your arguments. Synthetic thing. And all that really matters is the do part, not the try part, not any other part. That's the end. So that's the trolley problem, is it just saying, I'm not allowed to make a decision. Well, that's a decision, and that decision will end up with an outcome that's bad, and so fail. Made a terrible mess. Could have cost you, $1 million, and caused a bunch of limbs to fly off of people and horrible things to happen. I could have. Yeah. So it's one thing to. You could be a suicide bomber where you show up with a bomb and then you commit suicide, but the bomb doesn't go off. You just say, look, I could have blown up the bomb, but I didn't. Okay. To me, that's the more dignified, graceful way, but it's still saying, I demand intention. I can make a bomb, therefore my arguments deserve to be heard. What the fuck? No, that's just silly. Then it gets easier and easier to see the logic of it and the obligation of it. And to say, I'm not going to act because I have a principle. And the principle just means the worst outcome happens instead of the best outcome. Yeah, so there's some line, I don't know where the line is, where you can be confident legitimately. Where you've tested your rationality and you've tested your argument and you're saying, well, gee, there's just no way I can not be right. And it'd be nice if we could, like I always stated, there's no problem having a death penalty for crime, as long as it has accountability tied to it, as long as you're giving the death penalty to the right people. And so just have the governor sign that, yeah, I actually watched the trial. He's guilty as fuck. There's no doubt about it. I'd stake my life on it. So, yeah, if we made a mistake, then I made a mistake and I should be accountable for it. So as long as there's accountability, it's not so bad. But, nobody wants to take account for anything. No one wants to invest their real skin in any game. They're always betting with somebody else's money. Which is just, again, kind of, ew. I mean, betting with other people's torture. What? That doesn't seem right. Death penalty for hiding or facilitating. So I was talking about the slaves in that case. And, you can't say they were wrong. But, they're violating the law. The Civil War, that it would have been a better outcome. Okay. Yeah, so that's just so many, there's just way too many things to calculate to figure out whether there might have been a better way. It seems like there couldn't be a worse way, it was so bad. But maybe, it's it's a part of the, so, you know, if you're going to try to do your modeling of the world, it's a part so foggy that it's just too hard to, yeah, you can really, you know, hard to be confident. You have to say, even if it was random, 50-50, in terms of good decisions, bad decisions, you have to know that the outcomes definitely are different. And it's a gigantic stake. So, you know, that's the real problem here. There's an awful lot at stake in all of these circumstances. And, you know, who wants to be responsible? But somebody has to be. I mean, it's just a fact that the outcome would be different if the actions we create are different. Okay, in terms of the nice and peace and quiet in the universe, you know, you get to rescue all of the slaves, and in exchange for we torture you for 1,000,000 years. Yeah, so like I said, I mean, I'd be willing to take the bargain, and you know, there's a point where, if I'm willing to take that bargain, or I'm willing to be accountable, then I should be able to act. But there's no way to impose that accountability. There's no mechanism that, oh, you were wrong, and so we get to torture you for 1,000,000 years. You know, there's no mechanism to do that. They will, in fact, do it if I'm wrong, because they'll keep forcing me to live in the sense of just reliving this experience of realizing the whole thing is a farce. I mean, it's a DNA molecule run amok. Absolutely nothing to society in general. And so hunger strikes were just going out of vogue in this. So that was one of the things I thought of as a kid, as a maturing adult, is that maybe for one of these causes I could just go on a hunger strike. I end up, it's a win-win, because, you know, if I die, fine, I'm out of here, and I did something for the cause, you know, that kind of thing. But it is shortcut. There's just no. So at that point, I clearly wasn't recognizing that, well, if you're doing some antic to get attention, you're cheating all the things that aren't willing to yell louder. And you're saying, well, that's, I mean, when it's not your ass that's getting the shot, and it's not, you know, then it becomes, yeah, you know, yeah. Is that better than suicide bombing, when you know, basically engineer, you know, a system of picking the losers and forcing them to be the fodder for the... Oh, I think I was talking about Gandhi even. Yeah. So, you know, and the fact that, yeah, he did, you know, basically engineer antics that, you know, frankly got a lot of people killed, and that was acceptable collateral damage for the cause, and but people revere that decision. You know, just, you know, you've got to do something dramatic, and, you know, it's all this basically just history's written by the winners, and, you know, it's you know, just this, you know, if our side wins, it's a legitimate action. If it's against our side, it's an illegitimate action. You know, that kind of hypocrisy. The current occupants have to pay the price for paving the road to that much better future. It's just a fact. There's probably no way around. Right. So, you know, so anyway, the point is that, you know, none of this requires any of that. There's nobody arguing for any draconian imposition of non-procreation. There's just a simple argument that, you know, essentially the argument's already been won, because civilized people don't replicate at a rate high enough to maintain human existence. So, logically, you can just say, yeah, all I have to do is educate humans and give them a decent life, and they won't be a menace to the future. So, you know, no harm involved at all. And it's just, what does that last generation do to resolve the problem of all the retarded humans, you know, caught in the natural biosphere? Because they can't be helped, you know, by our civilization in any, they can't join it. Give the contract, they can't go to high school and not procreate, you know, that kind of thing. They can't, you know, they can't change their behavior and step out of their nature. Before I hit the button that if I'm wrong, I get severely punished, I accept that. Yes, but there's just, like I said, there's just no way to create that accountability, but I'd certainly be willing to contract myself, you know, substantially to some horror, because I am confident. I'm confident there's no God. I'm confident the evolution sucks as a mechanism. I'm confident the whole thing is dumb and stupid. I'm confident it's a preposterous waste to keep coming back here to try to learn something and then die. What's the fucking point? Brain works. So we have no right to invest in anything. I mean, that's just ridiculous, because people do it all the time. Yeah, I mean, every day you make decisions that will implicate somebody else. I mean, frankly, I mean, you can just argue, okay? I mean, this worst terrorist event in Southern California history, blah, 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 all this, you know, and no, more people are going to be killed in parking lots today by people's recklessness. You know, those sloppy, dumbass bullshit. People going speeders. I mean, it's just, yeah. That's not going to be in the newspaper. How many people did the drunks kill today? You know, that's not going to be on the front page. So the media is also part of this problem, because it's all so hypocritical. Again, if you die spectacularly, you're a story. You're important. But if you don't die spectacularly, we can totally ignore you. You know, you got no event. You know, the plane crashes, we get to know about all the people on the plane, all their lives, what terrible drunk driver kills them. Nobody cares. Understand what the hell that fucking bullshit's about? I have just no idea. It seems so counterproductive. I don't know what cause you could possibly defend in terrorizing children. Oh, yeah, well, that's even the... So some of these things are just so, you know, some people talk to their dog and their dog tells, you know, obviously those people are really, really nuts. So there's all kinds of levels of stupid and crazy that, you know, the actor uppers fall into. But yeah, I'd say it's all stupid and crazy. There's, you know, all the pressure escape. You know, yeah, so again, the cure is to recognize that, you know, all of these things don't happen in a day. You know, they happen over a lifetime. And, you know, and at least years and months and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's just no mechanism, no practical cure, no practical intervention that isn't hostile and frightening to the person you're supposed to be helping. A lot of stress and torment, and most of it just, you know, all of it ending in some sort of deconstruction. You know, so it's just dancing on the quicksand, and that's life, and it's stupid. Yeah, especially if you don't like dancing. You know, it's just really stupid. It's really stupid. It's such a plastic, like, okay, like plastic faucet. Yeah, I don't know what exactly I was comparing to a plastic faucet, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. Probably doesn't matter. Let's see, one more. Except, you know, that I have to walk through this trickier maze. So just talking about how, you know, all of these circumstances, everybody's focusing and trying to pervert somebody into this and pervert that and do this and do that, and you know, and you're like, who wants to be so careful and have such filters? And you know, and it's pretty annoying, frankly, that you just can't speak your honest mind, or yeah, just be honest and have an honest, make an honest statement, because everything has to be, there's so many people who just want to attempt to destroy, okay, with cheating, you know, just taking things out of context, taking poorly phrased statements, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's just, you know, it sucks that that's what it's turning into. But anyway, fake news, distortion, blah blah blah. Anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Call that a video. I think the video was more interesting than this summation, but who knows? Yeah, there was, I don't know, it seemed to have more continuity than this did, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. Watch it or don't. There's no obligations here. Anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Just, I'm not right. Yeah, so anyway, just getting old sucks. I'll just blame it on getting old. Alright, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Something like that.